guest has been killing it over the last couple years in TV. Shows like The Walking Dead, The Killing, and the classic Breaking Bad. And now Ray Donovan, Manhattan. 5 shows he has in the air right now. He is doing a bang-up job, and not only that, he's a board member for the Music Supervisor Guild. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Golubic. How are you, my friend?
Very well. Thanks for inviting me.
So I appreciate you taking the time out. I know you had a spotting session today and had a Skype call. We had a guild call this morning. You were just moving.
It's wall to wall these days.
How do you keep it together? 5 shows on TV. What is the secret to be able to do that at this point?
Well, having a team is really key. You know,
who's on your team? Who works with you?
Yeah, I have a wonderful team. I have Yvette McHugh, who's been working with me close to 5 years now.
Wow.
Michelle Johnson, who's been with me, I believe, 3 years now. And we now have a newest team member, Garrett McElver, who is, we share him with Steve Winogrodsky, who has him half the week. We have him half the week.
That's great.
So it's, yeah, it's tricky. I think a while ago I sort of realized that in order to make the business work, it's very hard to do it when it's just you and an assistant.
Sure.
And a lot of people just sort of traffic through interns. And I did my time as an intern, and I felt like after a year I needed to get paid properly. And a lot of times people just get, you know, switched out. And once I found Yvette, I really wanted to keep her on my team. And then once we found Michelle, we really wanted to keep her.
Once you train them, you want to keep them because you feel those are your people and you want them to win and you want to help them win and they help you win. So going back to your time as an intern, how did you get to become a music supervisor? What was your path in the door?
Oh, it was really random. I came in through radio, of all things. I was a journalist through most of my career and moved to Los Angeles to write a book, which I thankfully abandoned about halfway through because it just was not very good.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. But it was, you know, I had to fail to get to something better, I think. So I ended up volunteering at a radio station here in Los Angeles called KCRW, partly because I had started an internet magazine that died a terrible death. The LA Magnet, the Los Angeles magazine on the net, this is back in 1995. And unfortunately, there were no internet magazines back then. And I was
a little ahead of your time, as usual.
Yeah, and I lost an enormous amount of money in a very short period of time.
Right.
I basically, with my tail between my legs, I decided to volunteer at a radio station because I loved the station, and they were looking to have their first online presence. So I basically volunteered to help them not make the same mistakes that I'd made. And then I started to volunteer there in the music library. I met my friend Gary Calamar, and he and I used to basically hang out in the music library and try to make girls laugh and listen to music, and it was great fun.
Just two music geeks trying to get ahead in the world.
Two music geeks trying to make each other laugh, basically.
Right.
And we ended up, he started to do some music supervision with a guy named G. Mark Roswell. And when G. Mark was looking for an intern, Gary had suggested me. I met with G. Mark, and I started to work with G. Mark Roswell, and we worked on Varsity Blues, we worked on The Hurricane, a bunch of fantastic movies, and I learned a lot working with G. Mark. Lovely
Smart
guy. And years later, when I decided to leave, you know, G. Mark and strike out on my own, I did a few films on my own, including a film I went to Sundance called Shadow Hours, and Gary Calamar had a film that year that also went to Sundance, and both of our films got picked up there, and we just decided that it maybe makes sense to partner up. So we started to discuss that. We formed a company together, and a few years later I got an invite through one of the people at Shadow Hours to meet on a new pilot for HBO called 6 Feet Under, and I did the meeting, and the meeting went really well, and they basically asked for a mixtape, which I put together and then sent it off to them, and much to my surprise, even though I had very few credits, they invited me to be the supervisor, and I realized that this was a good time to work with Gary, that we could do a better job together than I could do it on my own. So I invited him to join me on the project, and off we went to the races.
That was a great show.
It was a great run.
We talked about the Sia, you know, when he was on the show last week, we talked about the Sia, the song, and it's just an amazing story how one song can launch relaunch a career.
Yeah, it was a great collaboration. I think, you know, Gary has certain strengths and I have certain strengths, and I think we really worked very well on that project together, you know, and when it came to the end of 6 Feet Under, you know, we'd had such a wonderful success with the Sia song, and it was just one of those moments where, you know, the show had come to such a satisfying conclusion, and I kind of wanted to do more documentaries and more films. He wanted to do more TV, and we thought this is the right time to part ways, and that's when I sort of began to move out on my own.
Right. So the biggest show of the last, actually the highest rated show on cable of all time, Breaking Bad. Talk about that experience working with a great showrunner like Vince Gilligan, who I met through you, and just talk about the experience and what you guys look for in music and how it was helped to be a character in the show.
Oh yeah, Breaking Bad's my favorite music supervision project. It's probably my favorite professional experience. Working with Vince is, there are not many Vince Gilligans out there. It's very hard to come across somebody who has such an incredible combination of just raw talent, generosity. He's a fantastic leader. He's really good at motivating everybody to do their best work. He works as hard as anybody I've ever met. And I think that the reason that Breaking Bad was so special was because everybody really followed his lead, and all of us sort of felt lucky to be part of that adventure all the way through. That whole project came together through a wonderful executive named Christina Wayne, who was at AMC at the time. She was head of original programming, and she was a big fan of the music in 6 Feet Under, and we had talked a couple times about different ways of working on a project together. We tried to work together on Broken Trail, but that didn't end up happening. I helped out a little bit in the early days of Mad Men, but they had a producer in mind, a supervisor in mind. And Alex Pizzavas has done fantastic work on that show. So when Breaking Bad came along, she asked me to do the meeting, and I had this really wonderful and very strange meeting with Vince the first time when I got to see the pilot, and the rest was off to the races.
So the show ran for how many years?
For Breaking Bad?
Yes.
5 years.
5 years. And so out of the 5 years, what would be the one or two favorite moments, and what were they? And talk about music moments.
Wow, there's so many.
I know, it's a hard one.
It's
like
a hard
children.
one, I know.
How can you pick your children?
It's like, the nun at the orphanage, which is my favorite child.
Right, exactly.
Well, one of them was putting together a narco corrido, which
I saw was amazing.
It was such a wonderful experience. Vince had basically shown me this video that was on YouTube. And the episode we were working on, it was a situation where Walter White was essentially building a reputation. He was becoming famous beyond his confined area. And one of the things that's important about that is that once you become famous, you start to attract trouble and competition. And one of the wonderful things about the entire drug world is the form of the narco corrido, which literally is drug ballad. Basically, they're songs written by performers, in the field who are singing stories about the self-aggrandizement of drug lords, and they get commissioned essentially to do these things. And so we thought we should have one for Heisenberg. So the problem we had was that, the videos are incredible, and if you ever want to spend an hour watching amazing stuff, just look up Narco Corrido on YouTube.
No, I've seen them.
They're amazing. It's like, machine guns and like surveillance footage of people stealing stuff and girls in bikinis and blow.
It's a crazy medium, shall we say.
Crazy medium. And we basically had to build the song from scratch. So I reached out through several wonderfully helpful colleagues, some who were at Sony Music Latin, some who were at Telemundo, who basically put me in touch with some songwriters and some artists, and we took a song that Vince Gilligan had written and essentially adapted it to the Narco Corrido format with this songwriter, and then went to this leafy suburb of Burbank to record with these guys who were in a Narco Corrido band from Phoenix, Arizona, who just did a bang-up job of it. Then we all flew out to Albuquerque, New Mexico to shoot the music video, and I think had one of the most strange teasers in the history of television.
And what was one of the final songs that closed out the series?
Well, the final song that closed out the entire series was Baby Blue by Badfinger, which was a song that Vince had selected. And it was a song that, I remember when he approached me about it, he said, I think I have the song to close out the series.
How far in advance did he have it?
This was probably, I'd say, halfway through the last portion of the series. So I'd say probably about two months out, maybe 2 to 3 months out. And I remember the time thinking like, oh, well, this is like taking away this incredible opportunity to find that final song. And I said, well, okay, let me listen to it. And I listened to it, and I didn't totally get it. It was a love song. It seemed kind of like, and the word blue was in it, obviously. And I just thought to myself, like, it seems like a bit of a literal choice. And so I thought, So I thought, all right, let me just sort of study it and sort of try to figure out what it is about it that he likes so much. And we did some digging, and we looked for different ideas. And again, we had just sort of read a vague script description. We never quite knew what the scene was going to be. There was a lot of security on that final scene, so we only got a chance to read the final sequence very close before we were actually working on the sequence. So we basically got to it, and I didn't really understand the choice until I finally saw that amazing shot, that beautiful crane shot. And once I saw the entire sequence, and I saw, Walter falling to the ground in this beautiful crane shot, and then having the police come in and seeing all the sequence of him going through the lab and affectionately touching the beakers and the containers and just having this final moment that he's going through the lab, I suddenly realized, oh, that's what it is. He wanted a love song. He wanted a love song, not just the chemistry, a love song for the act of creation, the love song to making Breaking Bad, to our collaboration, everyone's collective collaboration. It was the perfect way to go out.
You summed it up perfectly, huh?
Perfectly. And it was one of those moments where I thought, if only I had known. But the truth is sometimes you don't know until the very end.
Right. Any problems clearing it, or was it smooth?
No, it was relatively smooth. There are unfortunately 2 dead members of the band. That band had 2 suicides in it, which is a really terrible and tragic history. They had gone through lots of problems. They were one of the first bands signed to Apple's, to the Apple label,
right.
the Beatles label.
Beatles label, yeah.
And they had a rather unscrupulous manager who took a lot of money away, and it was a band that really had its fair share of tragedy. So there was, we dealt with the estates, but I think everybody was enthusiastic and people were aware of the show.
Such a big show that people had to. Were there any songs you can remember that were not cleared for the show?
Oh yeah, we had a few.
What were the biggest ones you can think of?
Well, one heartbreaking one was a Steely Dan song that we really felt was going to really speak to Walter White and his taste and his sensibilities. And it was just one of those songs where we had tried lots of different ideas, and I agree with Vince that it sort of captured a lot. It was a very efficient way of telling information about Walter White, and we just couldn't get the publishers to play ball with us. We couldn't afford it. They wouldn't budge, and unfortunately we were not able to clear it, which was kind of heartbreaking. But we put something else in there instead. But it was one of those moments where no one else knows that that song isn't there, but I know that it's not there.
Of course, it's always that way.
There. Yeah.
So you got a lot of stuff going on. I saw the ad for Manhattan,
yes,
which is all about the atomic bomb being built. Talk about that show, obviously period early 40s, right?
Yep.
And what kind of stuff are you using on this show?
Well, we're just starting out on it, so we're kind of getting thrown into the middle of a whirlwind. But it's 1943. It tells the story of the Manhattan Project, which was the race for the first atomic bomb. It takes place in Los Alamos, New Mexico. So again, I get to be back in New Mexico again, which is interesting.
Sure, Breaking Bad territory.
Breaking Bad territory. And it's a really wonderfully put together show. It's an incredible time period. I love the 1940s, and there's so much great music.
A lot of big band stuff?
Some big band, different types of jazz, different types of pop. We're still exploring the different avenues, but a lot of it is really that we're in a base. We're in a military base, an American military base. So a lot of the music is piped in, and a lot of the music is sort of environmental. So we are really kind of in a specific sort of palette. The tricky thing is finding affordable music in that time period and moving away. We don't have a huge budget, so we are trying to find now as many reasonably priced masters that are of the time period as possible. But we've had great luck so far, and people are coming out of the woodwork too, because this is music that hasn't been explored as much as it could be.
It's a good period, fertile period for music. Who's scoring that show?
That is Sigaros are doing the score.
Oh wow! So talk about how is that collaboration working?
It's a very interesting idea. It's one of those. Sigaros has for a long time been a band that seemed to be very cinematic. I mean, people always talked about they're such a cinematic band.
And they're a band from Iceland, right?
They're a band from Iceland, incredibly talented. It's Jonesy and Alex from the band that are putting the score together primarily. And they've done really beautiful work. I think in many ways it was a philosophical choice in the sense that we're telling a older story from a very modern point of view. And I think that it's a very interesting way of contemporizing the storytelling through the score while using source music to really kind of get you into the moment. So it's an interesting combination between the two. And I think that is, I'm also working on Turn, which is a series that takes place in 1776. And we are kind of doing a more traditional score approach with that when Marco Beltrami is doing the score on that. Beautiful, beautiful work on it. And at the same time, we are integrating new versions of old songs. So we're having, for instance, people like Jake Bugg doing songs. Laura Marling did a beautiful song for us. Matt Berninger from The National did the main title theme, in addition to a song with Andrew Bird. So we're taking these contemporary artists, giving them songs that are of the time period, that are from the 18th century or earlier, and then finding ways of telling our story with these modern voices telling these older tales. And I think with Manhattan, we are still working our way through it. We're just getting our bearings on it. But I think that this more contemporary score approach with older classic recordings is sort of an interesting balance. And each project's different. Each one has new challenges and unique ones.
Right. It's very cool. Before we go, I got to talk to you about Ray Donovan.
Yes.
And I haven't had a reaction to a show like this probably since, Boardwalk Empire is up there, Sopranos is up there, but I have to see that show on Sunday nights at 11 o'clock when it's on. So talk about that show and the music choices they make, and obviously a lot of it's end title stuff, but just, tell us how you got into it and what it is for you musically.
Yeah, it's a tremendously fun project. When you just look at the cast alone, it's like Liev Schreiber, Jon Voight.
Oh, Jon Voight's amazing in this
Paula
show.
Malcolmson, just the entire line of the brothers. It's an endless variety of wonderful actors.
Right.
Ann Bitterman is the showrunner and the creator of the show, and it's very much infused with her personality. She's very passionate about everything. So in many ways, it's a difficult project because it is much less of strategizing as it is in many ways throwing ideas at things and seeing what lands. And it's just this crazy roller coaster. I love the show, but I have to say it's hard. It's kind of like hold on and just throw the ideas forward and hope that things click. And the editors are incredibly talented, so a lot of times we'll throw ideas at them and they'll fall in love with something and then they'll build it, and then Anne will hopefully fall in love with it as well. Sometimes she won't, and then we'll do different variations and passes to try to replace it. Marcelo Zarvos is doing the score, which has been really beautiful. It's a show that it's ramshackle, but it works. Like every episode just has a certain kind of magic. That's what I love about television. It's so different. Breaking Bad is like this almost like Kubrickian sort of strategy. Everything is built smart and careful and thoughtful, and everybody is on top of stuff. Ray Donovan just runs like a roller coaster, and you never know quite where it's going, and you keep on thinking we're going to go off the rails at some point, and somehow it doesn't.
And what's been your favorite piece that you remember from that show so far that you've...
Yeah, we had there's a Kendra Morris song that we really loved called Banshee, and it was one of those tracks that we kind of had heard on her album and really loved. And the editor, Lynn Willingham, basically put it into a fight sequence. It was basically a boxing club. And it just sort of did something magical once it got placed in there. We had thrown it at her early on, and she found that home for it. And then Anne looked at it and really responded well to it. And it was just one of those things that just kept on building with momentum. It turned out to be one of the most Shazam songs of 2013, I think it was.
Really? From the first season?
Yeah, from the first season. And it's very rewarding when you find out that Shazam or technology like that is sort of validating your choices.
Right.
The Walking Dead had a lot of Shazams for certain songs that we had written for the show and worked with Jamie N. Commons or Sharon Van Etten, and they got a lot of people Shazamming, wondering, what is that?
You missed Jamie, by the way. He came to our event the other night.
Oh,
yes. After you left.
Welcome to the world.
Yeah, another reason I think Ray Donovan works for me is because Pooch Hall, who plays Jon Voight's illegitimate African-American son, I had cast in the movie that I wrote and produced, which it's called Snoop Dogg's Hood of Horror.
Oh,
and
nice.
The episode I wrote, and I've always loved Pooch, and that's his first big TV role.
Pooch is amazing. He's from Brockton, Massachusetts, I believe. I'm from Needham, Massachusetts. So we bonded over being old school East Coast New Englanders.
Yeah, tell him his boy Q from Hood of Horror
I
says
will
what's
pass the love to him. Yeah, he's fantastic. And what's so great about Pooch too is he's so warm and engaging. And when you put Pooch against Jon Voight, he's acting against Jon Voight. His game is just coming up and up and up. It's like Aaron Paul working with Bryan Cranston. It's just amazing how talented these guys are. Right. And in a strange way, Aaron has become this absolutely breathtakingly incredible actor, and some of that is certainly coming from his sort of tutelage under Bryan Cranston.
Right.
We all learn from the masters, and when we're lucky enough to work with people, like Anne or like Vince or like any of the talented people we've worked with for Alan Ball in the case of 6 Feet Under, you get better at your job. You learn how to tell a story in the most powerful way possible.
Well, right now, Thomas Golubic, master, killing it. 5 TV shows, and not only 5, but 5 great ones. And he's been on some of the greatest of the last decade or so. So thank you so much for coming and spending the time. And
my pleasure.
Now get back to work, brother.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Take care.
See you guys next time. For more Q-Score, please check us out at emPOWERme.tv to find out what goes on behind the curtain and how the film and TV music gets made. It happens right here. Tune in.